At this very moment, tucked away somewhere in your home, there is a roll of toilet paper. It might be stark white, it might be subtly scented, and honestly, you probably never give its existence a second thought until it's gone. But did you know that this everyday essential only made its debut in 1,857 inches New York, thanks to a man named Joseph Gaetti? Before that milestone lay a massive multi-millennial blind spot in human history, an era where our ancestors had to survive using things that were wildly, utterly mind-boggling. So what did they use? Stones? Leaves? Their bare hands? And when it comes to personal hygiene, just how clean were people in antiquity, really? The answer isn't completely repulsive, nor is it as pristine as we are today. It's a story far more nuanced and infinitely more fascinating. Let's start with the one thing every single human on Earth has had to do since the dawn of time: the daily business of going to the bathroom. The most ancient evidence archaeologists have ever unearthed of a post-bathroom wiping tool doesn't come from Greece or Rome. It actually hails from a remote Silk Road outpost named Xuanquanzi, buried in the desert sands of northwestern China. In 1992, excavators uncovered a 2,000-year-old latrine and stumbled upon dozens of bamboo and wooden sticks, each wrapped with a small piece of cloth at the tip. These were called times chehu, which translates roughly to hygiene sticks. When examined under a microscope, scientists found they still held the microscopic remnants of intestinal parasite eggs dating back to 111 BC. This is definitive proof that the ancient Chinese weren't just trying to stay clean, they were recycling. Wash, dry, repeat. Meanwhile, on the other side of the globe, the ancient Greeks were tackling the exact same problem with their own unique flair. They used smooth pebbles or broken shards of pottery known as times pessoi. Sounds painful, right? Well, the historical record confirms it absolutely was. Ancient Greek medical texts are littered with case studies of hemorrhoids and severe local trauma, with modern scholars pointing directly to these jagged pottery fragments as the culprit. Depending on the region, the Greeks would also grab moss, leaves, or seashells essentially. If it was smooth and within arm's reach in nature, it was fair game. But the real showstoppers of this saga are the Romans, who introduced an invention that is equal parts ingenious and deeply unsettling to modern sensibilities. They gave the world the times tersorium times a natural sea sponge skewered onto the end of a wooden stick, resembling a miniature mop. In Roman public latrines, known as times foracae, times where dozens of citizens sat side by side on long stone benches with a stream of water rushing beneath them, the times tersorium times sat waiting in a shared bucket of salt water or vinegar. Once finished, a user would plunge it into the bucket, put it back, and casually pass the turn to the next person in line. Yes, you read that right. A single sponge, shared by an entire public restroom. Through the lens of modern medicine, scientist Philippe Charlier and his team analyzed this collective habit and reached a blunt conclusion. This was easily one of the most hazardous and stomach-turning hygienic practices in human history. If just one person on that stone bench carried roundworms or intestinal parasites, the entire town would unwittingly bring home a host of microscopic hitchhikers. Yet the Romans remained blissfully unaware, as the concept of bacteria and germ transmission wouldn't be scientifically unlocked until the 19th century. And therein lies the ultimate paradox of antiquity. They could engineer jaw-dropping sanitation marvels like Rome's massive sewer system, the Cloaca Maxima, built in the 6th century BC, and still partially running today. Yet they had absolutely no idea what a microbe was. Their engineering was millennia ahead of their medical science. Now, let's pivot to the second half of the mystery: daily personal grooming. This is where the story takes a wildly unexpected turn. If you imagine ancient people just wiped themselves and called it a day, think again. They were profoundly obsessed with their teeth, hair, skin, body odor, and even body hair removal, investing an astronomical amount of effort into looking and smelling their best. Let's start with the mouth. The Romans brushed their teeth religiously every day. Their tools of the trade were small cloths or twigs with frayed, brush-like ends. Their tooth powder was a DIY concoction of crushed eggshells, charcoal, and pulverized oyster shells acting as a mild abrasive to scrub away plaque. But the crown jewel of their dental routine, the part that makes modern jaws drop in horror, was their choice of mouthwash, urine. The Romans swished with their own urine, and some even paid a premium for imported bottles from Portugal, which was rumored to be stronger and more potent. Surprisingly, this wasn't just a bizarre superstition. Science tells us that the ammonia in urine actually acts as a natural bleaching agent and mild disinfectant. They couldn't explain the chemistry, but they knew the results spoke for themselves. The Egyptians, meanwhile, elevated personal care to a sacred, near-religious art form. The Ebers Papyrus, penned around 1550 BC, contains meticulous recipes for skin creams made of animal fat blended with lime, alongside exfoliating body scrubs utilizing natron, a natural salt and honey. Egyptians shaved their entire bodies from head to toe using bronze razors. Women even managed body hair using a melted paste of sugar, lemon, and water, the exact same sugaring technique that high-end modern spas hawk today as a revolutionary new trend. Spoiler alert, it's not new, it's 3,500 years old. Then came the timeless nemesis of humanity, body odor. The Egyptians didn't just use frankincense and myrrh resins for temple rituals, they tucked them directly into their armpits as an early deodorant. Archaeologists have even found small, scented wax cones in Egyptian tombs. People would wear these cones on top of their heads, letting them melt slowly under the scorching sun, bathing them in a stream of perfume all day long. It was the literal birth of solid fragrance. The Greeks took a much more rugged, athletic approach: olive oil. They would slather their skin in oil before working out, then use a curved metal tool called a strigil to scrape away the oil, along with all the accumulated dirt, sweat, and grime. But here is the wild twist. That disgusting cocktail of oil and sweat scraped off the bodies of famous gladiators wasn't thrown away. It was bottled up and sold to aristocratic Roman women as an ultra-premium face cream. The literal sweat and dead skin cells of men fighting for survival on the arena floor, marketed as the ultimate luxury cosmetic. Actual soap, as we know it, didn't enter the picture until the Babylonians around 2800 BC, who figured out that boiling animal fat with wood ash created an alkaline compound capable of stripping away grease. That formula eventually trickled down to Egypt, Phoenicia, and Rome. The Romans even wrapped it in a brilliant myth. On Mount Sapo, the fat from sacrificial animals supposedly melted, mixed with wood ash, and seeped into the clay along the banks of the Tiber River. Women doing laundry downstream noticed the clay left their clothes miraculously clean. And just like that, Sapo times became soap, became times Savon. Here is the ultimate takeaway we so often forget. Our ancestors weren't filthy because they were lazy. They were dirty simply because they lacked a microscope. But the innate human drive to be pristine, to smell sweet, flash a brilliant smile, and sport glowing skin has remained entirely unchanged across the millennia. So, picture it now. The dreaded times, tersorium times, sitting in a shared bucket, contrasted against the elegant scented wax cones of Egypt and the oyster shell toothpaste of Rome. The same human beings, the same bodies, the exact same desires. The solutions just shifted based on whatever was within arm's reach. So, the next time you stand in front of the mirror tomorrow morning and squeeze out a dollop of toothpaste, take a second to imagine a scene from 3,000 years ago. An ancient Egyptian, hunched over, meticulously grinding charcoal and eggshells to do the exact same thing. Human needs haven't shifted an inch over the centuries, only our toolkit has evolved. And who knows, a few hundred years from now, future generations will probably look back at our tubes of plastic and rolls of paper, shake their heads in absolute disbelief, and reinvent the wheel all over again.